John Man, aka the Nappy Headed Assassin, aka I am Manny Son, aka the Catman, aka the world's worst football prognosticator. And this is week 3 of the Catman Picketh. Uh, got a little things a little bit better this week. Streaming not only on Facebook, also streaming on Twitch, both of my YouTube channels, which is Catman Do Sports and John Man Baby. Also, you can catch me um, on Facebook, and you also can catch me on my Twitch channel. Uh, for those who do not know who I am, the Catman, I am a diehard Philadelphia Eagle fan. But I like to say I don't see things through Eagles colored glasses. I do weekly picks throughout the week. I do watch film on pretty much every game. I have an obsession. Unemployment helps with that. Um, but be that as it may, I do watch every game. That thanks to the good folks at NFL Plus, be able to break down games, break out tape. So when I do give my picks, this is not something that I go out on a limb. I actually dig down and go deep with my picks. Currently, for those who are just joining me or finding out about me, currently for the season, my record is I'm at 20, 12-1, and that includes Thursday night's game. Thursday, I did pick Cleveland over Pittsburgh. I had the score 17-13 Cleveland. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Cleveland has beaten um, Pittsburgh by 20, score 29-17. So first couple of weeks, my first week I was 10, excuse me, my first week I was 9-6-1, had a push, with a tie between, the Colts and Houston. Um, Last week I was 10-6. So far this season, believe it or not, I have had all the, primetime games correct. So primetime, I'm pretty good. Every, Sunday, during the day, not so much. Um, so that's a little brief introduction of the kid. Um, Broadcasting live from who that is. That's my baby daddy studios. Um, so in parts unknown. But without further ado, because some of you want to get ready for the game, and we'll get to run right through these picks real quick. But before we get on that, just wanted you to know that you can follow me on all social media. Um, John Man Baby, that's JONMANBABY. Is all located on the on the ticker at the bottom, and Catmandu Sports on various platforms. This platform that I am recording and streaming on is brought to you by Restream. But without a further ado, we're gonna get this thing rocking, and we're gonna get this thing crack a lacking, as the kids used to say back in 1996. And start off with our first game. Our first game that I am going to talk about is the Saints and Carolina. The Saints are the Saints are 1-1, and Carolina is 0-2. Um, last week, the Saints was um, coming off a 20-10 loss to Tampa Bay, and Carolina was coming off a close loss to the New York Giants. Vegas have the Saints as a 3-point road favorite. Um, Offensively, the Saints does not have a running game. Taysom Taysom Hill is the leading rusher for the Saints. Jameis Winston is throwing a lot of passes, throwing for a lot of yards, doing what Jameis do, hit or miss. Baker Mayfield looks like Baker Mayfield, and you can see why that Cleveland has moved on for him. Christian McCaffrey still looks fragile. Um, but having a solid season to start with. Like I stated, the Points spread is 3 points. Um, Excuse me, points spread is 3 points with Carolina, a home dog. Last five matchups between the teams, two teams. The Saints has won four out of the last five games between them. Last year, the last play was season. Saints won 18-10. Um, I am going to go with Vegas on this. I like the Saints, but I like him a little bit more than a field goal. I trust Jameis Winston a little bit more than I trust Baker Mayfield. Both defenses are blah. Both offenses are blah. But I just like Jameis a little bit better than I do like Baker. Um, Following that, the next game is Chicago and Houston. Played at Soldier Field. Um, the Bears are 2.5 point favorites at home. That means Vegas does not have any faith in Chicago whatsoever. Levy Smith could be a revenge game for him coming back to Soldier Field. We all know that he was the coach of the Bears when they went to the Super Bowl with sexy Rexy Grossman as his quarterback. Um, and they got demolished, so to speak, by Mr. Manning and all that. But we're not going to get into that. But we're going to talk about today's game. Davis Mills looks like a solid quarterback. Houston does need a quarterback, but Mills has been playing a little bit solid this season. Has 417 yards, two TDs. The running game is pretty much non-existent. Damian Pierce is their leading rusher. Um, Brandon Cooks is doing what Brandon Cooks does. He's their number one receiver. Put up some solid numbers. Um, Now with the Bears, Justin Fields is looking. I mean, he is still struggling. He hasn't been able to put all these things together as a young quarterback. Hopefully, that will come. Uh, the young kid, he is too talented um, not to succeed in the league. But there's a couple of things that are troubling as I see when I do watch the tape with him. That his eyes drop um, more than it should. So hopefully for him, he works on that and get that a little bit better. Last week, excuse me, last week, um, Houston, last week, Houston lost a tough game. Broncos. That Nathaniel Hackett with the Broncos just kept Houston in the game. That was one of the most inept games that I've seen by Denver. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Houston had a chance to pull that game out, um, but they fell apart at the end. The Bears last week got blown out by the Packers. Wasn't even close. Um, so that's that. Um, my pick, I have Houston with a slight upset on the road. So for two road picks that I have for them. So I have Houston on the road beating Chicago. I trust Lovey Smith in that defense. Houston's defense is pretty solid. I don't think Justin Fields is ready yet, ready for prime time, but he could prove me wrong. Um, but I am picking the Houston Texans. Next game is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Indianapolis Colts. Kansas City is coming in with a huge Thursday night win over the Los Angeles Chargers. They pulled it out of at the end. Justin Herbert got hurt in that game, but they was putting some hits on him. The defense was really hitting them hard in the second half. The first half, it was all Los Angeles. Second half, Kansas City did what Kansas City do, started dominating and let Patrick Mahomes, go to work. He had Patrick Mahomes was lucky. He had probably about 3 or 4 passes that should have been picked off, um, but he was fortunate that they weren't picked off. Herbert, in that game, threw a crucial pick inside the 5 yard line that was pretty much the turning point of that whole game. And excuse me, Indianapolis last week got blown out by Jacksonville. Jacksonville, that defense is just looking great. Saxonville, so to speak. Matt Ryan looks very, very old. Matt Ryan looks like Dennis Quaid in any given Sunday. And the Colts need to do something quick. I don't know if they're gonna put Nick Foles or thinking about putting Nick Foles. Excuse me, put thinking about putting Nick Foles in, but Matt Ryan looked horrible last week. Um, with that said, my pick, Kansas City on the road in a blowout. I don't think it's going to be close. So that's 3 road games that I so far. I beat Indianapolis. Those just coming in. I have Houston beating Chicago, and I also have the Saints beating Carolina. Next game is probably going to be one of the 2 best games I predict on the 1 o'clock slate. It's the Buffalo Bills versus the Miami Dolphins, and excuse me, the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. We're playing in South Florida. The Bills are surprising 6-point favorites um, in today's game. Uh, Not only I think it high, um, but them being favored on the road, I think they're underestimating the defense of Miami. Now, Buffalo's defense is probably one of the top 3 defenses in the league, and you got Josh Allen, who I find is inconsistent as a quarterback, but so far consistency has been his strong point this year. Buffalo looks like they're on a team on a mission. Um, Allen is slinging the ball everywhere. Stephon Diggs is catching the ball. Their running game is non-existent. Um, Singletary there is their leading rusher, and he only has 67 yards. Now we talk about the Dolphins. The Dolphins have an explosive offense. Last week, Tua had that amazing comeback. Dolphins had amazing comebacks against the Baltimore Ravens. Tua threw for six TDs and a whole bunch of yards. Tyreek Hill and Waddle, they had monster games. Everybody on that offense had monster games. Miami also is another team that's running that running game is non-existent. Um, the last 5 times these 2 teams played, Buffalo is 5-0 in the last 5 times they played. So the way that everything is shaping up with Josh Allen in that defense, it does look like that Buffalo is the better team. It looks like Buffalo is going to make it 6 in a row. But I agree. I disagree with all of that. I think Miami will pull up the upset at home. I think the hurricane that is coming to Florida is having everybody on edge, and is going to give them that extra boost to get these guys fired up and get the fans fired up. They're going to be into this game. They know this is a big game for them and Tua to show that the Dolphins are back. So I think the Dolphins are going to pull off the upset, and I think they're going to beat them by 6 points. I think they're going to take that 6 and flip it. Next game I want to talk about is Detroit versus Minnesota. Detroit looks like one of the most improved teams in the league versus Minnesota. Detroit coming off a victory last week over the Washington Commanders. Their offense is putting up points. They are the number one scoring team in the league, believe it or not. Defense, hit or miss. The defense played pretty solid in both the Philadelphia game and the Washington game. They let Washington back into that, you know what I'm saying, into that game. Um, you know what I'm saying, the defense let that let Carson Wentz get them boys back into that game. With that said, Washington, excuse me, Minnesota had a tough loss last week, Monday night, against Philadelphia, where they were completely dominated for 2.5 quarters. Game wasn't close. Kirk Cousins looked like how Kirk Cousins normally do in a prime time game. I don't believe it was a prime time game. I just think that they just were not prepared for the situation, and I think they underestimated um, Jalen Hurts in that Philadelphia offense. It's a unique offense, and I think they got blitzkrieged, and they could not um, come back. You know what I'm saying? Come back for that. Last 5 times these two teams played, um, Minnesota has won 4 of the last 5, which with Detroit winning the last 29-27 last year. Vikings are 6 point favorite at home. I think that spread is a little bit high. I don't think the Vikings is not as good as the spread, and I think the Lions is a little bit better. But I am taking the Vikings. But I think it's going to be a one possession game, a field goal game. I don't know. This is one of the toughest games that I had to pick, but I think that Minnesota is going to go ahead and take care of business versus Detroit. Next game is Baltimore and New England. Baltimore is going to New England. Um, Baltimore, I just mentioned earlier that they blew that huge lead against Miami. That was a complete total meltdown, a complete collapse. Lamar Jackson would be talked about as an MVP candidate if would be in the top three, honestly. If Baltimore would have been able to hold on to win that game, but they didn't wasn't able to do anything in the second half. The defense couldn't stop them, and they just got murdered in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. That fourth quarter is one of the worst fourth quarters I've seen by a team, especially at home. It was just a mind-boggling loss. New England, excuse me, New New England, they are coming off a slim win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mac Jones had a pretty solid game. Uh, the running game for New England, is Damian Harris had a pretty solid game. But Nelly Aguilar, an old Philadelphia Eagle, had a monster game as far as receiving, 110 yards plus a touch. Jacob Myers had a pretty solid game with 95 yards. That offense there in New England is starting to pick up. Mac is starting to look like he's getting into the groove. Um, the last 5 times these two teams played, excuse me, I'm sorry. The last 5 times these two teams played, New England, New England has won 4 out of the 5. Um, New England is a I'm sorry, Baltimore is a 3-point road favorite. And I'm going to agree with Vegas on this. I think, matter of fact, I think Baltimore is going to win by at least double digits. I think they're going to knock the taste out of the mouth of last week. Their defense is a lot better than it showed in the fourth quarter last year, and I think Lamar Jackson is on fire. He has something to prove, and I'm looking at them to blow out New England on the road. Next game is Cincinnati at the Jets, and Cincinnati um, coming off that tough loss against the Cowboys. We don't know if there's a Super Bowl hangover. Joe Burrow is not looking like Joe Burrow. Um, I don't know if it's a junior year, sort of sophomore, or the Super Bowl hangover, or whatever you want to call it. But the offense is definitely out of whack with Cincinnati. Um, once you got film on teams, and you know how to, and you watch how teams defend, and everybody saw how the Rams were able to defend that potent in the second half, and I think that's carried over to this season in regards to stopping that monstrous offense in Cincinnati. Um, now the Jets, last week had a pretty remarkable win again. Cleveland fell asleep. One of those games, another game that a defense collapsed at the end of the game. Flacco threw a couple of touchdowns within the last 2 minutes. There was no way that Cleveland should have lost that game, but guess what? They did, and that's why they're the Browns. Um, the Jets with Flacco, um, passing game is solid. Running game is definitely solid. Running the ball with Carter and Hall. Um, the defense is meddling, and I don't know what the. It's too early to tell about the defense, but I do think that if the offense keeps moving the ball like that they have been doing, that they might be able to keep that ship afloat for Zach Wilson when he comes back, um, which would be within the next couple of weeks. The last 5 times these two teams played, Cincinnati has won 3 out of last 5, but the Jets last season won the last meeting 31, and I'm looking at the Bengals getting off the snide, and I don't see them going 0-3 because I don't. And if they do, their season will be pretty much over. I don't think they could come back from 0-3. They're 5-point favorites. I'll take those 5 points with Cincinnati, and I believe that they will beat the Jets. Next game is the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Tennessee Titans. It's one of two of the ugliest games I think that's on today's slate. And I'll tell you what I think is the next ugliest game on today's slate. But the Titans coming in, both coming in 0-2. 0-2, both 0-2. The Titans is coming in off a horrible performance against Buffalo. Buffalo beat them like they stole something. They beat them. I mean, Buffalo beat them to the point that you thought they was running up the score for CS for all your old football fans. Um, it was nothing positive about that game whatsoever. For Tennessee, offense was horrible, defense was horrible, special teams was horrible, and this was done in front of everybody and in front of a national audience. The Raiders They're coming off a loss, a tough one, another collapse. Last Sunday was the week of collapse. Another collapse by a team down the stretch. There's no way they should have lost to the Cardinals. No way they should have let Kyler Murray get hot um, in the fourth quarter and in overtime. 22. That was outscored 22-0 between the fourth quarter and overtime. That is completely uncalled for. Defense collapsed. Offense was very stagnant. After getting off to a pretty good start in the first half, they just completely fell asleep, took their foot off the gas. Josh McDaniels have to do a better job, um, and getting these boys um, putting the pedal to the metal to that. Um, Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm over here choking to death. The Raiders are 2-point favorites. Um, Raiders are 2-point favorites on the road in Tennessee. I don't know why. I don't have an understanding with that. And I'm disagreeing with Vegas on that. I'm going straight with Tennessee. I think it's going to be a very close game, but I have Tennessee beating the Las Vegas Raiders. The next game is very dear to my heart. Like I stated earlier, I am a Philadelphia Eagles fan. But most of my picks, well, I'll say most, all of my picks, I try to be as objective as possible. They are playing um, the Washington Commanders in the Carson Bowl. Um, Washington coming off that loss to Detroit. Uh, Carson Wentz does and did what Carson Wentz does. He put pretty decent numbers, but had some crucial turnovers. He had a couple crucial turnovers in that game that couldn't get them, allowed them to get their footing to get back, completely back into that game. Uh, um, but Carson Wentz in the top three passing yards, 650 yards. He had 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Scary Terry McLaurin as their leading receiver. They got the rookie Jahan Dotson out of Penn State that is catching everything that Carson is throwing. So the offense looks pretty decent. The offense looks pretty decent, but the fact of the matter is, you don't know what Carson Wentz you're going to get. Um, Philadelphia, the Eagles, Jalen Hurts had a monster, I guess what you want to call a breakout game, so to speak. Monday night against the Minnesota Vikings. I personally don't think it's a breakout game because some of the things that people said that he could not do, I was seeing things prior and stated that um, he could do those things, and I've seen him do the things that they say that he couldn't do. It just came out. It was a culmination, so to speak. So everything came together on Monday night, and he played pretty much flawlessly. 333 yards, over 50 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns, a touchdown, and a pick. And the pick wasn't really his fault. Well, he threw the ball, but Gainwell bounced off his hands, and then it got picked. But outside of that, the Eagles look pretty good. One thing that the Eagles have to work on is putting their foot on the pedal. There's a lot of games that the Eagles have had over the last 10 games where the Eagles dominated in the first half and pretty much went into cruise control of the second half. And Nick Sirianni has to find a way to make sure they still have that sense of urgency, and hopefully that doesn't bite them in the near future. The Eagles are 6.5 favorites on the road, which is a scary number when it comes to division games, especially a game like this with a lot of emotion, a lot of all these things going on, a lot of storylines, so to speak. The last 5 times these two teams played, um, the Eagles has won 3 out of the last 5. They swept Washington last year. There was circumstances, COVID, and some other things that was going on with Washington. So I don't know if that was a fair assessment, but a sweep is a sweep nonetheless. And us Eagles fans will take that. Miles Sanders, I believe, it will be the key to this game. He's lights out. All the focus is on Jalen Hurts, but he's pretty much lights out of that receiving core that the Eagles have with AJ Brown, Quez Watkins, and Devontae Smith. Um, I mean, Washington's receiver core is just as almost as talented as the Eagles receiver core. So that's pretty much a wash right there. But two things that I like Jalen Hurts more than I like Carson Wentz, even on a home game. I like the Eagles' defense a tad bit better than Washington's defense. I think Washington has a better pass rush. I think the Eagles have more depth. So you might think that I'm calling this a homer pick. And maybe it is, but I do feel like the Eagles will beat Washington, and I think it's going to be. I think the 6.5 is a little bit too high, honestly. And if they do beat them by more than 6.5, and I'm not talking about like 7 points, but if they beat them by double digits or more, then I will say that the Eagles are probably scary. But if they lose, they're back to square one, and then everybody is off the bandwagon. No, oh boy! Now the 4 o'clock games. This next game, 4 o'clock game, want to talk about is kind of intriguing. All right, it's kind of intriguing. It's Jacksonville versus the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are 7 point favorites, and they're 7 point favorites without knowing who's the quarterback. You know, and I will tell you this: that number is completely high. Jacksonville, coming off that blowout win of the Colts, everything clicking. Um, Trevor Lawrence, looking like he's starting to improve, starting to mature, looking like a franchise quarterback. James Robinson is running the rock um, for Jacksonville. Pretty decent game last week. That defense, just unbelievable. Saxonville and Duval just came in and just dominated an old quarterback, and they just dominated the offensive line. Um, and that defense is pretty darn good. Um, and as far as the Chargers, I touched on this earlier. Justin Herbert with the fractured rib cartilage. I don't even know what that means. I don't know how you can break rib cartilage, but it is what it is. But he has rib injury. Um, he is at the mercy of game time decision. Um, Either way, I think he's going to be very limited. I think Chase Daniel will be getting a lot of play time this game. The Chargers um, had that tough loss against Kansas City where um, Herbert did get hurt. Kansas City was just teeing off. And if Kansas City is teeing off, um, I think Jacksonville's defense is better than Kansas City. So with this pick, I am having it doesn't matter. I don't care if it's Herbert. I don't care if it's Daniel. Because of the fact that I know that Herbert is not 100%. I am picking Jacksonville to pull off the upset on the road against the Chargers. I think that defense is just too good, and I just think that with Doug Peterson, he's going to have that offense a little bit balanced for Trevor, and they'll be able to pull off that upset. Now, here's a second game that I think is going to be the ugliest game of the day, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons versus the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are coming off a blowout loss in San Francisco to the 49ers. You know, Trey Lance get hurt, then Super Jimmy G comes in, and the Price is Right horn is laid for the Seattle. Mm-mm-mm. Because it was all downhill. Jimmy G looking like how Jimmy G looks in the regular season, throwing balls behind his back. He did a cartwheel, threw a pass, whatever the case may be, to a backflip, and got into his kung fu grip stance and everything like that. He just looked pretty decent. Seattle looked horrible. Pete Carroll, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they want to win, if they don't want to win, or whatever the case may be. But oh my gosh, Seattle looks horrible. Running game injuries there, and it's just not in flex, so they can't do what Seattle um, normally. I'm sorry. Yeah, Seattle couldn't do what Seattle normally does. As for Falcons, the Falcons last week, a horrible loss um, to the Rams. They let the Rams jump out to a big lead, and then Mariota and their boys got hot in this late in the fourth quarter, and they made it close, but the Rams held on. I had 32 quarterbacks at the beginning of the season. I did not have Mariota as one of my top 32 quarterbacks, and there's nothing going to change my mind in regards to that. Maybe Trey Lance's injury, possibly, or whatever the case may be, but I don't have any faith in Mariota. The Falcons um, are 3-point underdogs against Seattle. Seattle's 3 point. Seattle's 3-point favorites. The running game, the running game is pretty decent with Cordell Patterson is playing pretty decently. Drake London is having a pretty good start to the season. Kyle Pitts is nowhere to be found, and that is horrible for me because, like a dummy, I jumped on the Kyle Pitts bandwagon, and he has got me absolutely Nathan. As the kids in the streets used to say in the mid '90s, early to mid '90s, Nathan, nothing as far as fantasy points. Um, Seattle, Geno Smith is still the quarterback. We don't know how long that's going to be, but he's not missing, but they are throwing very short passes. He's just playing very conservative. The offense is very conservative with Geno. Running game is non-existent because the injuries or whatever the case may be. Last 5 times these two teams played, Seattle has won 3 of the last 5, including the last 2. Last time they played was in 2020, where Seattle beat the Falcons by 13. My pick for this game is the Seattle Seahawks. I think they're just the least ugliest out of the two. It was like pretty much a coin flip. I flipped like the coin like 26 times to see who I would pick in this game because this was a strictly and truly pick'em game for me. Um, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, the game of the week. Two old behind quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers with Green Bay and excuse me, Tom Brady. excuse me, Tom Brady with Tampa Bay. Tom Brady looks old. I mean, Tom Brady look like what I'm saying, he's playing like that he stopped paying his Illuminati dues and Satan came to collect. Um, but he is definitely not looking like Tom Brady, he is definitely looking like he can't wait for the season to be over. I don't know if his old age caught up with him. I don't know if it's his personal life. I don't know if it's a combination of both, but Tom is looking shaky. But I'm going to tell you one thing that is not looking shaky is that Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense. I think the Tampa Bay has the best defense in the league, and if they can hold the fort and until Mr. Brady gets halfway, maybe they might have to do the Peyton Manning weekend and Birdie, Tom Brady, and just to get him across the finish line. But they had to do something. But that defense is a beast. Is a beast. Is a beast. A beast. Now Green Bay, Tampa Bay. I'm sorry. Before I get to that, um, Tampa Bay is coming. Excuse me, coming off that win against the Saints. Um, Double digit win, which was big for them because the Saints have had their number of recent. It was a big fight. Uh, Mr. Mike Evans will be playing in today's game. He got suspended in the fight. He got suspended in the fight with Mr. Lattimore of the Saints. So we're going to know if that's going to have a big impact on the Buccaneers. But the Buccaneers have depth at receiver. They picked up Cole Beasley, um, and hopefully they can do something, to offset what they're losing without the production, losing as far as the production of Mike. I'm saying Evans, yes, Mike Evans. I was about to say Mike Scott. Um, Now Green, Green Bay, Green Bay is coming off that beatdown of Chicago. Uh, Aaron Rodgers um, short pass the Bears to death. But they did die. Defense looked pretty decent. Aaron Jones had a monster game running the ball. Might be the MO for Green Bay from here on out. Just give the ball, to Mr. Jones, let him run out because I would appreciate that too. Because fantasy purposes, he is my running back in one of my many money leagues. So that's that. Tampa Bay is a favorite. Tampa Bay is a home. Tampa, Tampa Bay is a home favorite against Green Bay. They are. Excuse me. I'm sorry. They are. I believe. For wait. Am I reading? Am I reading correctly? Tampa Bay is. I'm sorry, people. Anyway, Tampa Bay is favorite. Um. Either way, Tampa Bay is favorite. They are favorite by. I got it. We'll talk the spread. Everything like that. There we go. Tampa Bay is only a 1.5 point favorite, and I think that is bla- blatant respect to Todd Bowles and his defense. And I believe that they're going to beat Green Bay by double digits because of it. Um, so that's the 1 o'clock and the 4 o'clock games. If you're still here with me, I appreciate the time. The last game of the day is San Francisco and Denver. I spoke earlier. They lost that. Excuse me. They won that ugly game against Houston, 16-9. Russell Wilson. Oh my goodness, he is. Ugh. Um, he is not looking like Russ. He doesn't look. He's looking everything but dangerous. He's more like danger bus. Um, as a free agent signing, but I still have faith in Houston. Excuse me, in Denver. Um, but I don't have faith in their coach, Mr. Hackett, coaching like Buddy Hackett, old school Disney movies, comedies, and everything like that in the '60s. Because that offense looks comical, and the decisions that he has made is comical. So now he has people coming in to help him make decisions because he can't make decisions on his own, which Denver should have found that out before they hired him. But it is what it is. But I'm not a Denver fan, so I'm not going to harp on that as much. San Francisco with Jimmy G. Jimmy G. Um, that's the reason why Trey Lance didn't want Jimmy G around because he knew that he's fragile, and he knows that if he gets hurt, it might be a done deal, and he might get shipped out, which might not be a bad thing for the kid. But I do wish that kid well. San Francisco coming off. Excuse me. San Francisco. Coming off that unbelievable. Excuse me. Mm, San Francisco. Coming off that dominating win against the Seahawks, where Jimmy G did come off the bench and save the day. Their defense looks phenomenal. Looks very very good. I like everything about their defense. Um, Running it, they still running the ball with Jeff Wilson Jr. It's up to the forefront with a couple of injuries in the running back position, but Jimmy G got that offense humming. G just stepped right in, fit like a glove. Um, Denver I'm sorry, the 49ers are a 1.5 point road favorite. Vegas doesn't have any faith in Buddy Hackett. I'm sorry, Nathaniel Hackett. Um, and I don't have any faith in Nathaniel Hackett. And so I am wanting to take the Denver Broncos because I have faith in Russell Wilson to get it back on board. So that's Denver over San Francisco on the on the Sunday night game. Quick rundown of today's picks. Have the Saints, Houston, Kansas City, Miami, Minnesota, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Tennessee, Philly, Jacksonville, Arizona, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Denver. Tomorrow I will be doing a quick recap of how I did how I did today and talk about Monday night's game. We're about 10 minutes of kickoff. So if you was with me and enjoyed some of the time, I'm glad you're here. Follow me. Follow me on all my excuse me. Follow me on all my social media. Everything's at the ticker at the bottom. This is John Mann, the Catman, aka the world's worst football prognosticator. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you people in the near future. I'm out.